San Antonio is a city where the past doesn't just sit in museums. It breathes in the humidity of the river walk and sighs in the shadows of the Alamo. Elena, a young woman mourning the recent loss of her younger brother, moved to the city for a fresh start. But every night at 2 a.m., she was woken by a faint, rhythmic sound, the rattling of a small, brass locket against her nightstand, even though no window was open and no breeze was blowing. One sleepless night, the locket didn't just rattle. It slid across the wood toward the door. Following an unexplainable pull, Elena drove to the infamous railroad crossing on the city's south side, the site where a ghost story says a school bus was once trapped. The air was unnervingly cold, and as she parked her car near the tracks, she saw a faint, shimmering dusting of white powder appearing on her rear bumper, the handprints of children. Among the dozens of small handprints, one was unmistakably familiar. It was the exact size of her late brother's hand, including the slightly crooked pinky finger from an old playground injury. Tears blurred Elena's vision as a soft, giggling sound echoed through the mesquite trees. A small boy, flickering like a dying candle, stood on the tracks, holding out a hand that looked like it was made of mist and moonlight. The boy led her away from the tracks and toward a hidden stone staircase that descended beneath the tourist-filled river walk. Down here, the water wasn't the festive green of the city lights. It was a deep, sorrowful indigo. The walls were lined with thousands of Milagros, small metal charms, that represented the prayers and heartaches of San Antonio's people over the last 3 centuries. At the bottom of the stairs, the tunnel opened into a vast, silent chamber where the Caretaker of Sorrows sat. He was a tall man in a tattered Tejano outfit, his face half human and half sculpted, decorated with vibrant marigolds. He explained that San Antonio was built on a river of tears, and every soul lost in the city's long history of battles and tragedies was gathered here to keep the city's heart beating. The caretaker told Elena that to free her brother, she had to leave her most precious memory behind. He reached for the brass locket around her neck, the one containing the only photo she had of her brother's smile. If she gave it up, he would be free to enter the light, but she would never be able to see his face in her mind again. The horror wasn't in a monster, but in the thought of forgetting. Suddenly, the room was filled with the sound of a distant trumpet playing El Degelo, the song of no quarter. The stone walls began to bleed a dark, shimmering liquid that smelled of gunpowder and old roses. The ghosts of the 1836 battle began to materialize, their faces weary and sad, not looking for a fight, but looking for a way to finally lay down their heavy, spectral rifles. The caretaker told Elena that to free her brother, she had to leave her most precious memory behind. He reached for the brass locket around her neck, the one containing the only photo she had of her brother's smile. If she gave it up, he would be free to enter the light, but she would never be able to see his face in her mind again. The horror wasn't in a monster, but in the thought of forgetting. The Indigo River began to rise, swirling around Elena's waist. The ghost children from the tracks appeared in the water, their faces pleading. They weren't scary, they were lonely. They were the lost spirits of the South Side, waiting for someone to acknowledge their pain, so they could finally stop pushing cars off the tracks and start walking toward the stars. The walls of the chamber transformed into the crumbling limestone of the Alamo mission. Elena felt the heat of a fire that had burned nearly 200 years ago. She saw her brother standing among the fallen heroes, his small hand tucked into the hand of a ghostly soldier. They were all part of the city's eternal guard, the spirits who protected San Antonio from a darkness that lived in the Texas soil. Elena clutched the locket so hard it cut into her palm. Her blood dripped into the Indigo River, and where it hit the water, a new metal charm formed, a milagro in the shape of a heart. She realized that grief wasn't a hole to be filled, but a bridge to be crossed. The horror was the isolation, but the cure was the connection to the city's collective soul. With a trembling hand, Elena unclipped the locket and placed it into the caretaker's skeletal palm. As soon as she let go, the chamber erupted in a soft, golden light. Her brother's spirit brightened, his gray threads turning into pure gold. He leaned in and whispered a single word into her ear, a word only they knew, before his image dissolved into 1,000 marigold petals. The underground chamber began to collapse, the limestone cracking and turning into dust. Elena scrambled back up the stone stairs, the sound of the ghost children's laughter fading into the morning bird song. As she reached the surface of the river walk, the sun was just beginning to hit the top of the Tower of the Americas, turning the city into a golden sanctuary. Back at her apartment, Elena looked at her nightstand. The locket was gone, and for a moment, panic seized her. She tried to picture her brother's face, and while the image was blurry, the feeling of his love was stronger than it had ever been. She didn't need the photo anymore. He wasn't in the locket. He was in the very air of the city she now called home. That evening, Elena drove back to the railroad tracks one last time. She looked at her car bumper, expecting to see the white powder handprints. They were gone, but as she drove away, she noticed a single, perfect marigold sitting on her dashboard. She smiled through her tears, knowing that in San Antonio, the dead are never truly gone. They are just waiting for us to remember them with love instead of fear.